Welcome back. It is 11:16 on midday and a far different looking canal side, the great Chilean blob, and the $1 breakfast. Dave McKinley has our weekly walk back through time when those stories and more were all news to you.
10 years ago this week, when Asiana Air Flight 214 became the first airliner to crash in the U.S. since Flight 3407 more than 4 years before, the Vatican announced the late Pope John Paul II would become a saint. Just in time for the 4th, the Statue of Liberty reopened for the first time since Superstorm Sandy some 9 months prior. In Buffalo, crews began renovating this old building on Franklin Street into what would become Dinosaur Barbecue. And here's how things still looked at the historically aligned canals at Canalside just a decade ago, this week in 2013. 20 years ago this week, the world was in wonderment of the great Chilean blob washed up on the shore of the South American country, mystifying scientists as to its makeup. This week's News to You pop quiz: what did the great Chilean blob, as it was known, actually turn out to be this week in 2003? Remember, this was the same week when the Bills first acknowledged that 20% of the 7,500 heated seats at Rich Stadium installed 4 years prior to entice fans to purchase more expensive club seats were failing. When Tom Baker, director of the Oshai Foundation, was named as the first chairman of the newly created Buffalo Control Board, when Kobe Bryant was arrested on sexual assault charges, when then Massachusetts governor, future presidential candidate, and current U.S. Senator Mitt Romney rescued a family from a sinking boat, and when folks were allowed to sign up for the very first time for something new called the National Do Not Call Registry. We lost Barry White and Buddy Epson during a week when a president was heard to say,
"Freedom is the hope and the future of every land."
Words as true today as they were this week in 2003. 30 years ago this week.
The Crossroads Arena will sit near South Park and Main in Buffalo, just a slap shot away from Memorial Ard.
This after the state came through with the money allowing for construction of the facility with its $115 million price tag, although the governor at the time, Mario Cuomo, said there was but one string attached.
But you have to win the Stanley Cup, you know that.
Still waiting on that one. We aired our very first report regarding how spending too much time on the computer could strain your eyes. And then, just as now, we had tornadoes.
There's damage everywhere,
And we had floods. And we had wildfires and weeks of extreme heat, and our air quality was worse than it is now. And statements to the effect that these are only new phenomena fly in the face of history and the pictures you are seeing right now on your screen. One stark difference, though, well, you'll see it coming up over the shoulder of the coastie. Ah, yes, there it is. The $1 breakfast, surely, and most unfortunately, something relegated to those long ago days when it was all news to you.
So interesting. And here's the answer, by the way, to this week's News to You pop quiz about that giant blob that washed up on the shore of Chile 20 years ago this week. Well, early speculation was that it was some sort of giant octopus known to science. But it took about a year later to learn the real truth using what was then relatively new DNA technology. Scientists were eventually able to deduce that the giant Chilean blob was in fact the remains of a sperm whale. The tissue mass, which washed up on the shore in 2003, weighed 13 tons and measured 39 feet across. Is that what you would have thought, Patrick? The remains of a sperm whale?
That's kind of what it looked like blubber to me. I think that's the first thing I thought of. I don't remember that story, though.
I do.
I remember all of them, but that one I don't remember.
I also forgot that Harbor Center or the HSBC Arena and Marine Midland Arena all began as Crossroads. I forgot that was the name of where the Sabres
Doesn't
played.
have a ring to it. I like what we got now in terms of a name. All right.